age of men is over. The time of the woman has come.
Hello everyone, Pantoufleee here today for a new video in which we are going to talk about a tier 4 German tank destroyer called the Hetzer. The main reason I did this video is that I'm pretty much nostalgic about all those tier 4, tier 3, all those low tier tanks that used to be completely broken back in the good old days of World Tank Blitz. So I'm probably going to start a series where I'm gonna talk about all those tanks for those of you who didn't have the pleasure of playing them, or for those of you who just started playing the game maybe in the last couple of updates and that didn't have the chance to get the Hetzer with the 105mm gun. Let me explain a little bit what is the current state of the Hetzer, because of course after this replay we are going to see another one from a really old version of the game, not even the 3.0 update, where you are going to see what a real Hetzer was capable of. But for the moment, concerning this one we have in the current meta, it's actually not a bad tank. I played it for the review for this video, and honestly I wasn't disappointed. If we sum up the characteristics, it has an excellent traverse speed, a really reliable gun that has a lot of penetration and a good alpha damage. Honestly, the armor is not so bad. If you manage to hide the lower part of your hull, you should be safe. It's clearly a good tank, among the best at tier 4, at least from the tech tree. But when it comes to comparing it to what it used to be, oh boy, is it impossible for the actual Hetzer to be compared with its older version that was way freaking better. This tank was so broken back in the good old days that Wargaming had to nerf it 3 freaking times. Can you just imagine? The only tank that received nearly as much nerfs as the Hetzer currently in the game is the Sheridan, the tier 10 ATGM tank. Wargaming had to strike literally everything on the Hetzer, and still the tank is actually really good, even if it got severely nerfed, because back in the days, this tank had everything. You had an amazing armor profile, you had an amazing mobility, and to finish, you had probably the best gun at tier 4. You had an amazing dirt gun that we are gonna see in action right after. And all those things combined on only one tank that is low tier and therefore facing new players, everybody was still clubbing in the Hetzer because of that. And that was the funny days. I mean, I'm glad that Wargaming actually nerfed the tank, because in the past it was completely broken. But you know, every time I'm reminding myself of the good old days of the Hetzer, I still feel nostalgic and I would like to get it back. Which of course is impossible, and maybe for the best. But now let's focus on the oldest version of the Hetzer. I managed to find a replay that is freaking 4 years old. So when the Hetzer was the best out there. And just look at the graphics, you know that I'm not lying when I tell you the replay is old. But what made it broken? Let's first talk about the armor profile. The tank's frontal armor was so great that it was impossible for nearly everything from the same tier and even one tier above to penetrate it. Nowadays there is a huge difference on the Hetzer armor profile, at least frontally, because the lower part of the hull is easily penetrable and became a weak spot. But back in the days you had the same exact armor profile on the top part of the hull and at the bottom, which made the Hetzer totally immune against frontal shells, even from tank destroyers. But the armor profile was helped by something else as well, because back in the days, if you wanted to load gold shells, you had to pay them with gold. It was impossible to buy gold shells for credits, therefore literally nobody was playing with gold shells. So just imagine, even with gold shells you are gonna struggle penetrating the Hetzer. So when you play with regular shells, it's a no-go. It was impossible to penetrate the Hetzer as long as it was facing you frontally. You had to either circle it or just die. Now we gotta talk a little bit about the mobility. The mobility received the smallest nerf because Wargaming decided that the Hetzer had to be mobile, and I think it's a good thing that the Hetzer still kept his mobility, because back in the days, okay, it was a little bit faster and turned around a little bit quicker, But hey, nowadays and back in the days, you wouldn't see the difference between both mobilities. It was like 1 or 2 kilometers and 1 or 2 degrees per second, so nothing to be really excited about. Let's say that concerning the mobility, the Hetzer never really changed. But now, the main thing about the Hetzer, what makes it completely amazing, broken, satisfying, funny, fun, whatever you want, the gun. The gun on this thing is something else, and let me explain to you why. First, the tank features a derp gun, which means you don't need to penetrate to actually do damage, and as you had a 105mm gun at tier 4, you would probably put with HE shells around 100 to maybe 150 alpha damage on everything you were shooting at as long as your shell went in. You did not need it to penetrate, and that was a huge advantage considering that back in the days you had to spend gold in order to buy premium shells. The second thing was probably its alpha damage with HE. You had 350 alpha damage. Just imagine at tier 4 what it means. You need 2 shots that penetrates to destroy your target. And you gotta remind yourself that the HE penetration on the Hetzer back in the days was completely broken. You could penetrate tier 3 frontally without even sweating, and that was the same for some tier 4, and for the most armored one you just had to circle them and maybe shoot on the side for you to do 350 damage. And that was quite huge considering the tank only had 10 seconds of reload, which means you had an amazing and completely OP DPM that you combine with an amazing penetration and frontally impenetrable tank. And all of that made this tank completely broken. I would be curious to know how many of you had the pleasure of playing the Hetzer when it was still broken with the 105mm gun, so if you did, feel free to tell me in the comments, and also feel free to tell me what kind of tanks you want me to talk about in the future nostalgic video where we're gonna talk about the broken tanks of the past, because I think it could be an interesting series both for old players that will be nostalgic about seeing what the game has become, and also for new players to know what they missed or what they avoided, depending on what side we put ourselves on. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. If that's the case, feel free to subscribe, like and share, and I'm gonna see you soon, probably for a new video or a new stream tomorrow or tonight. See ya guys.